They laughed when she walked in wearing obsolete Earth armor. They whispered when they saw the dents, the scars, the faded insignia. No one remembered that war anymore, except the armor did. And when the instructor finally recognized it, the room fell silent. They noticed her the moment she stepped inside. Not because she was loud, not because she demanded attention, but because she didn't belong. In a hall filled with gleaming alloys, adaptive shields humming softly against armored skins, she walked in wearing Earth metal. No glow, no shimmer, just dull, scarred plating that looked like it had been dragged through hell and back, and never cleaned afterward. Whispers followed instantly. Some didn't bother lowering their voices. Is that solid armor? Primitive. Does it even have a shield generator? Humans really sent this? She kept her gaze forward, shoulders straight, every step measured. The weight of the armor was familiar, comforting even, like an old companion that had already seen her at her worst and never failed her. The chest plate bore deep gouges, not decorative, not ceremonial, damage that had bitten inward and stopped inches from where her heart would have been. The left pauldron was mismatched, welded on instead of forged, its surface etched with tiny hand-scratched lines that meant nothing to anyone watching. They laughed anyway. The Academy was a place of legends, or at least that's what the banners claimed. Species from across the galaxy trained here, each bringing technology refined over millennia. Armor that adapted to incoming fire. Systems that predicted enemy movement before the muscles even twitched. Suits that could rewrite their own structure mid-combat. Compared to that, Earth armor looked like a relic pulled from a forgotten museum display. Someone deliberately bumped into her as she passed. His shield flared briefly, instinctive, automated. Her armor didn't react at all. She didn't stumble. She didn't even look at him. Careful, he said with mock concern. Wouldn't want that antique to fall apart. A few chuckles rippled through the hall. She stopped. Slowly, deliberately, she turned her head just enough to meet his eyes. No anger. No challenge. Just calm, steady acknowledgement. The kind that made people uncomfortable without knowing why. It won't, she said simply. That was all. No threat. No explanation. She turned back and continued walking. The instructor stood at the front, towering even by Academy standards, his armor seamlessly bonded to his physiology, plates shifting subtly as he moved. His gaze swept over the recruits, sharp, practiced, and then lingered on her longer than the rest. Not with interest. With dismissal. Human, he said, the word neutral but heavy. You're aware this is a combat academy, not a reenactment hall. A few recruits snorted. She nodded once. Yes, sir. His eyes flicked down her armor openly now. That equipment is non-compliant with Academy standards. No visible shield emitters. No adaptive plating. No neural combat interface. It complies, she replied. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't waver. With Earth standards. That may be the problem, someone muttered. The instructor didn't correct them. Instead, he tilted his head slightly. Earth standards, he repeated. Outdated by several cycles. Humanity has limited engagement history at this level. The words were careful. Political. Still dismissive. She said nothing. He moved on, already losing interest, addressing the rest of the group about upcoming evaluations, about testing thresholds and elimination criteria. The Academy believed in efficiency. Weakness was filtered out early. Those who couldn't adapt didn't advance. As he spoke, the others kept glancing at her. Some with amusement. Some with curiosity. A few with outright disdain. One of them leaned closer, lowering his voice just enough to feel private. You know, he said, they archive armor like that. For educational purposes. You could have just watched the war footage instead of cosplaying it. She didn't respond. What they didn't see, what they couldn't, was the way her fingers brushed briefly against the edge of the chest plate as if checking something unseen. The way her breathing synced instinctively with the weight distribution of the suit. The way her stance adjusted subtly, compensating for gravity variations without conscious thought. To them, the armor was old. To her, it was proven. When the instructor announced preliminary physical assessments, confidence surged through the room. Enhanced musculature. Artificial reflex boosters. Bio-augmented lungs. The recruits flexed, shields flaring faintly as systems came online. Someone glanced at her again. You sure you don't want an upgrade? He asked, almost kindly now. This place eats people alive. She finally looked at him. Really looked. I know, she said. The assessments began quickly. Strength tests. endurance calibrations, reaction timing. One by one, the recruits performed, their results flashing across displays. Numbers climbed. Records edged closer. Approval followed. When it was her turn, the murmuring returned. She's first to drop. No shields. One hit and she's done. Human physiology won't last. She stepped forward anyway. The platform adjusted automatically, scanning her equipment. A brief pause followed. Systems recalibrated. Unregistered material density detected, the system announced. The instructor frowned slightly, but waved it off. Begin. She moved. Not fast, not in the way they expected. No explosive acceleration. No flashy maneuvers. Just efficiency. Every motion economical. Every action deliberate. When resistance increased, she didn't fight it head-on. She absorbed it, redistributed force through the armor the way it had been designed to do. The numbers climbed steadily. Not spectacularly. Steadily. Whispers softened. She finished the assessment without visible strain. The armor bore the load exactly as it always had. When the platform powered down, she stepped off smoothly. The instructor glanced at the results, surprised despite himself. Not impressed. Not yet. But the dismissal faltered, just a fraction. He said. You'll proceed to combat evaluation. That drew fresh laughter. Combat was where technology decided everything. Where shields flared and adaptive systems dominated. She acknowledged the order with a nod. As she turned away, one of the recruits shook his head. Why would anyone still wear that? He asked aloud. It's like clinging to failure. She paused, just for a moment this time. Because, she said, without turning around, it still works. She walked on, the old Earth armor carrying her forward, scarred and silent, bearing the weight of a war no one here remembered, and lessons they were about to relearn the hard way. The inspection chamber was quiet in a way that made even confident recruits uneasy. Light panels swept over equipment, cataloging materials, power signatures, and compliance metrics. When her turn came again, the system hesitated, its scanning field lingering on her armor longer than protocol allowed. Unregistered composites detected. The artificial voice repeated, less certain this time. Material origin inconclusive. The instructor's attention sharpened. He stepped closer, studying the armor with a frown that had nothing to do with mockery now. Up close, the imperfections were impossible to ignore. This wasn't ceremonial plating made to look old. The surface was uneven where molten metal had once cooled in vacuum. Microfractures had been sealed manually, not by automated nanoforges. The damage told a story of survival, not display. You've modified this, he said. Yes, sir, she answered. That weld pattern, he continued, tapping a section near her shoulder. It's crude. Inefficient by modern standards. It was done under fire, she replied. A few recruits shifted uncomfortably. The casual laughter from earlier didn't return. The instructor straightened slowly. His eyes traced the faint markings etched along the inner edge of her chest plate, symbols worn thin by time and movement. They weren't decorative. They weren't even standardized. They looked personal. That insignia, he said carefully. It's not in current Earth registries. No, sir. Why? Because it was removed. The answer hung in the air longer than expected. He circled her once, his own armor whispering as it adjusted. This configuration doesn't align with Earth's last known military exports, he said. Those suits had shields, neural interfaces, modular enhancements. She met his gaze. Those suits came later. Something flickered in his expression then. Not recognition. Not yet. But doubt. The scanning field intensified, probing deeper. Internal layers appeared on the display, dense, overlapping structures built to disperse kinetic force rather than negate it. Heat-resistant alloys fused with shock-absorbing latticework. No energy shields. No adaptive morphing. Just layer upon layer designed to take punishment and keep moving. This armor is inefficient, one of the recruits said, unable to help himself. It wastes mass. She didn't look at him. It assumes resupply won't come, she said. It assumes extraction might fail. It assumes you'll be hit again. And again. And again. Silence followed. The instructor's jaw tightened slightly. He zoomed in on a specific impact scar, deep and circular, edges burned inward. Plasma. Military grade. Not training output. This damage, he said slowly. It exceeds skirmish-class weaponry. Yes, sir. From where? She hesitated. Just long enough to notice. From the line, she said finally. The instructor's gaze snapped up. Which line? The one that held. A few of the older cadets exchanged confused looks. The younger ones didn't react at all. The term meant nothing to them. He stepped back, arms folding. Earth records classify your species' early engagements as limited support operations, he said. Logistical reinforcement. Rear-line defense. That's what survived the archives, she replied. The display suddenly highlighted a sequence of embedded fragments within the armor, foreign metal, fused deep into the plating. Not shrapnel. Not debris. Something else. The instructor leaned closer, eyes narrowing. That alloy, he murmured. That's not Earth-forged. No, sir. Recognition brushed the edge of his thoughts, elusive and unsettling. He dismissed the scanning field with a sharp gesture. You'll undergo live combat evaluation, he said. Immediately. A ripple of anticipation moved through the room. Combat was familiar territory again. Something everyone understood. As they prepared, he stopped her with a raised hand. One more question, he said quietly. How old is that armor? She looked down at it, not with pride, not with nostalgia, but with respect. Older than me, she said. Younger than the war. The words struck harder than intended. He watched her walk away, his mind working despite himself. The armor didn't fit current timelines. The materials didn't match known deployments. And yet, he'd seen that lattice structure before. Long ago. In reports that had been sealed, then buried, then quietly reclassified. Around them, recruits whispered again, but differently now. Less laughter. More speculation. Did you see the scans? That density shouldn't be possible. She's carrying foreign alloy. One voice cut through, sharp and uncertain. Why would a human still wear something like that? She didn't answer. She was already focused inward, checking seals, feeling the familiar weight settle across her spine. Memory pressed close, not as images, but as sensations. The sound of impact reverberating through metal. The smell of scorched air. The knowledge that if the armor failed, there would be no second chance. The instructor stood apart, staring at a paused frame on his display, a magnified image of one particular marking etched near the collar. A sequence of symbols, half worn away. He knew those symbols. Not consciously at first. Not fully. But his pulse had quickened the moment he saw them. They weren't taught anymore. They weren't spoken. They belonged to a time the galaxy preferred to simplify. A war officially labeled a containment failure. An engagement described as brief. A conflict everyone claimed had been resolved before escalation. Except it hadn't. It had been stopped. By forces no one liked to acknowledge. The instructor closed the display with a sharp motion as the combat evaluation was announced. He straightened, professional again, but something had shifted. The human recruit was no longer a curiosity. No longer an embarrassment. She was a question. And the answer, he suspected, was going to make a lot of people very uncomfortable. The combat evaluation began without ceremony. No speeches. No warnings. Just the low hum of systems activating and the sudden awareness that every movement was being recorded, analyzed, and judged. Opponents took their positions across the arena, shields shimmering to life, weapons syncing with neural targeting. Confidence radiated from them. This was where they excelled. This was where technology decided outcomes before the first strike landed. She stood alone at her mark, Earth armor dull and unresponsive by comparison. No glow. No power surge. Just weight, balance, and readiness. The signal sounded. They moved first. Energy fire lanced across the space, calibrated to incapacitate without permanent damage. Shields flared brilliantly as they advanced, overlapping fields creating layers of protection. Tactical feeds predicted her movements, projecting her failure in neat probability arcs. She didn't charge. She stepped sideways, letting the first volley strike her shoulder. The impact rang through the armor, force dispersing along reinforced channels. Pain registered sharp, controlled, but the suit held. She adjusted her stance, already moving before the next shot arrived. Murmurs rippled through the observers. She didn't evade. She took the hit. Another blast struck her chest plate dead center. The armor buckled inward slightly, then locked, redistributing force through the lattice beneath. Her breath left her in a controlled burst. She kept moving. The recruits hesitated. Their systems recalculated. No shield flare. No collapse. The data didn't match expected outcomes. She closed the distance. At close range, their advantage narrowed. Adaptive weapons required prediction windows. She didn't give them any. Her movements weren't fast, they were relentless. Each step absorbed punishment and converted it into forward momentum. A cadet swung, energy blade humming. She caught the strike on her forearm plating, metal shrieking as it held. Before he could recover, she drove her shoulder into his center mass, the armor's mass and structure doing the work her muscles didn't need to. His shield flickered, overloaded by sustained contact rather than a single strike. He went down hard. The room went quiet. Another opponent advanced, adjusting tactics, increasing output. A sustained beam raked across her back, heat building fast. Warning indicators flared inside her helmet. She didn't retreat. She rolled with the force, letting the armor's outer layer char and peel, shedding heat the way it had been designed to do. The pain sharpened her focus. She reached him, grabbed the weapon housing, pulled. It tore free with a sound like ripping metal. He stared at her in disbelief as she shoved him aside, turning toward the next threat. The instructor watched, arms slowly lowering from their folded position. His eyes weren't on the display anymore. They were on her armor, on the way it deformed, adapted not by changing shape, but by refusing to break. On the way she fought as if she expected to be hit, planned for it, accepted it. Memory surged unbidden. A different battlefield, different gravity, lines collapsing, shields failing, species retreating one by one as losses mounted. And humans, moving forward anyway, armor blackened, formations tightening as the fire intensified. He felt cold. The display flashed an identifier as her armor took another direct hit. The system attempted classification again, deeper this time, cross-referencing fragments, patterns, impact signatures. A warning symbol appeared. The instructor stepped closer to the console, heart pounding despite himself. He overrode the filter. The name surfaced. Not officially. Not in public archives. In a restricted designation buried under layers of euphemism and redaction. The war that shook the galaxy. The one no one liked to name. His breath caught. She took another hit to the chest, staggered, then kept moving. Her breathing was heavy now, controlled but strained. Blood ran from a cut at her temple, dark against pale skin. Still, she advanced. One of the remaining cadets hesitated, and that was enough. She exploited it instantly, sweeping his legs and driving him down with the full weight of her armor. His shield failed completely. The signal ended. Silence followed. Thick. Absolute. She remained standing, shoulders rising and falling, armor scorched, dented, unmistakably damaged, and still intact. She didn't raise her arms. Didn't look for approval. She simply waited. The instructor found his voice with effort. "End evaluation," he said, more softly than protocol demanded. No one moved. He stepped forward slowly, eyes fixed on her chest plate. On the worn markings he now recognized with horrifying clarity. "That armor," he said, the words heavy, "was issued to frontline human units during the containment war." A ripple of confusion passed through the recruits. "There was no frontline human deployment," someone said. "There was," the instructor replied. His voice carried now, authority edged with something else. After everyone else withdrew. He turned to the room, the past crashing into the present. "You call it a border conflict. You teach it as a diplomatic failure resolved by superior strategy." He looked back at her. It was a slaughter. The recruits stared, uncertain, unsettled. "Humans were deployed to hold the breach," he continued. "Not to win. To delay. To buy time no one else was willing to spend." He swallowed. That armor was built for sustained attrition under conditions where shields collapsed and resupply never came. The room felt smaller somehow. He met her eyes. "You're wearing survivor-issue gear." She nodded once. Nothing more. Understanding spread slowly, like a shadow. They hadn't mocked a primitive relic. They had mocked proof. The instructor straightened, his posture no longer dismissive, no longer superior. "You may stand down," he said formally. She didn't relax. Not fully. Not yet. Around them, the recruits shifted, their confidence fractured. The galaxy they thought they understood had just revealed a crack. And through it, they glimpsed the reason it still existed at all. No one spoke after that. The silence wasn't imposed by authority or fear of reprimand. It was the kind that came when certainty collapsed and no one knew what to replace it with. The instructor let it linger, because this was the lesson that never made it into simulations. "You were taught that technology ends wars," he said at last, his voice steady but stripped of its earlier edge. "That superior systems decide outcomes before sacrifice becomes necessary." He gestured toward her, still standing in scorched earth armor, breathing slow, controlled. That belief is why this armor still exists. Eyes followed his motion. No one laughed now. No one looked away. Human armor was never designed to dominate a battlefield, the instructor continued. It was designed to endure one, to function when shields failed, to protect flesh when systems went dark, to keep a soldier moving when retreat was no longer an option. He paused, then added quietly, because retreat wasn't always allowed. She felt the weight of every gaze, but she didn't shift. The armor creaked faintly as internal stresses equalized, familiar and grounding. They sent us, she said, her voice carrying without effort, because we were the only ones who could stay. Some of the recruits stiffened. Others frowned, processing words that cut against everything they'd been taught. The breach didn't close because of strategy, she continued. It closed because it ran out of bodies to break through. The bluntness hit harder than any accusation. We weren't supposed to be remembered, she said. Just counted. The instructor inclined his head slightly, acknowledgement passing between them. After the war, he said, the council reclassified human involvement. They called it auxiliary support, logistics, containment assistance. He exhaled slowly. It was easier than admitting the truth. A recruit finally found his voice. Why didn't you upgrade it? He asked, not mocking now, genuinely confused. If it's that old, why keep using it? She looked down at the armor, fingers resting briefly against the battered chest plate. Because it already did what it was built to do, she said. And because every mark on it is a lesson. She lifted her gaze again. New armor teaches you how to fight. This teaches you how to survive. The instructor turned back to the group. You measure strength by output, he said. By efficiency. By how little damage your systems allow you to take. His eyes hardened. Humans measure it by how much damage they can take and still advance. He stepped closer to her, voice lowering. That armor held the line when entire fleets withdrew. A murmur passed through the recruits, uneasy, reverent. She didn't win today because she's stronger, he said. She won because she expects the fight to last longer than comfort, longer than pride, longer than hope. The instructor straightened, formal again, but the respect was unmistakable. From this moment forward, he said, Earth combat armor of this class is recognized as veteran-grade equipment. The designation echoed through the room, recorded, irreversible. She inclined her head once. Not in triumph. In acknowledgement. The instructor met her eyes. You honor those who wore it before you, he said. I carry them, she replied. No one laughed. No one whispered. The recruits watched her walk away, the old armor moving with her like a second spine, scars catching the light. It wasn't sleek. It wasn't impressive. It was undeniable. And for the first time since they'd arrived, the galaxy's future soldiers understood a truth their histories had tried to bury. Humanity didn't survive because it was advanced. Humanity survived because it refused to fall.